Hello, crafters and Spellbinders fans. So it's October 1st, and that means we have a whole slew of Spellbinders Club kits that are completely new and available to purchase. So today I'm going to be sharing with you two of the club kits. One is the small die of the month, and one is the large die of the month. And I'm going to specifically go through the large die and just give you a run through of the card that I made with the small die because that one's a little bit simple. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sets. So the first one I have here is the stitched ornament and display. So this is the large die of the month, and this one is really cool because it basically, you just put it together and you have something cool to work with. It's basically a display box for an ornament. Then for the small die of the month, we have outline Christmas sentiments, and it comes with a few extra little elements that you can add to those sentiments, which also have shadow dies. So let's go ahead and look at all of the pieces for the large die of the month. Now, I've first of all got these two pieces here that I attached together and cut out twice from gold metallic cardstock. I would say these are the sidebars and they're the detailed piece. Then you actually need the piece that would go behind it, and I cut that out of some white cardstock twice. Now, the largest die in this set is what forms the top and bottom bars, and you're going to need 4 of them. I've cut them out 4 times out of white cardstock. Then we'll go ahead and cut out this piece, which is what holds your ornament in place. I've cut it out of some gold metallic cardstock. Now, there's also this curved die. Keep that aside because you're going to need it with those 4 panels that we cut. Then you also have your ornament. So these two pieces I stick together again with some washi and cut it out to get 2 die cut pieces. You probably only need 1, but my paper is thin, so I cut 2. And I'm showing you I lined up these holes in the center to make sure it was straight when I cut it out. So these are my 2 die cuts. I'm going to stick them together so that they have a bit more sturdiness. Now you also have the detail portion, which you can cut out of something like this. I've got gold glitter cardstock, which I'm going to attach, and it basically just highlights your ornament. Next, I've got the little topper that goes on top of the ornament. That's from gold metallic cardstock, and then all of the extra little bits. So you've got these pine branches, you've got little berry branches, you've got poinsettias and holly leaves, and I cut all of those out separately from specialty cardstocks. And those are the pieces that you're going to use to jazz up your card in the end. So let's move on to these pieces here. So these are the larger panel pieces, and you can see that there are 2 score lines in them. What you want to do is take that curved piece and line it up in between in the larger rectangular section. Now you can see here I lined up the edge of the die with the edge of the paper, which is wrong. So I wanted to show you that this is the wrong way to do it. Now, if you consistently did this for all of your panels, then it would still work, okay? But I want to show you the right way to do it. So the right way to do it is to line it up in between the 2 center score lines with that top portion just above. So you're going to line up the horizontal line with the top horizontal line of your panel. So the bottom horizontal line of your die with the top horizontal line of your panel. And that's where it's going to cut properly. This way, it'll cut all the way through your paper and you're not going to have to cut an extra bit or any portion of that curve off. That's how you know you did it right. So you can see here that piece just comes right off. Now, I could still use that other panel behind this one because you have 2 of these on the top and bottom. So you're not really going to notice any deficiencies, but I did want to make sure I showed you the right way so that you can do yours the right way. So this is another trick. I actually took 2 of my panels and cut them out at the same time. This way you don't have to make sure they all line up and so on and so forth. So that's also another way to go about this and make it faster. So now I have all of my panels. I did cut them all out of white, as you can see. I did that because I didn't have the color cardstock that I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an ink color in the color that I want, which is a plum color. I wanted a nice deep purple. And I'm going to go ahead and add ink to these cardstock panels to make it the color I want. Now, when I do this method, I always make sure that I'm using an ink pad with a re-inker. So what I did was I did put my ink pad to the paper here to make sure that I gave it the color I wanted, but in between I was re-inking the ink pad. So do not do this if you don't have a re-inker. I really don't recommend that. So I've gone ahead and done this to all of the pieces that were white that I want to have the plum color. And you can see that if you add more than one coat, you're going to get a deeper color. So be careful with this. Make sure it's just one coat or two coats of what you want so that each panel ends up the same shade. Now, I also added color to a 5 by 7 inch white cardstock panel. Now, this is going to be the base or the back of your card. And while it was still a bit damp, I put it in the Christmas, I think it's Scattered Christmas embossing folder. So this is the embossing folder of the month for October. And you can see that it came out nicely. So now that I have all of my plum pieces put together, or at least inked up and embossed the way I want, I'll go ahead and put together my ornament. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using 2 pieces of cardstock. If you have thicker cardstock, you can just use one and it'll work just fine. I just wanted it to be sturdy so that I could do my sewing. And that is another trick to doing or working with the stitching dies. You really have to make sure you're using a thicker cardstock, or just double up your cardstock so that it's got that strength so that it can hold your string and do whatever you want it to do in terms of stitching. Now, once I've got that put together nicely, all the holes are lined up, I'll go ahead and do my stitching. And for this card, I know in some cards I actually do some variated stitching in different ways. For this one, I'm just going to do some normal straight stitching. I'm just doing the starburst like most of the stitching dies have the patterns for. And all I've done is I've taken some gold thread and I've doubled it up because my thread is a bit thin, so I want it to show nicely. And doubling up accomplishes this. And I'm using a number 22 tapestry needle, which can also be found on the Spellbinders site if you are starting out stitching yourself. And I'm just going to stitch this as you normally would. So I'm not going to show this whole process because, I mean, the stitching takes some time and it's pretty simple to do. So once I've got all my stitching done, I'm going to go ahead and add those detail elements to the ornament. So I've got the 2 detailed glitter pieces. I'm going to add one to the top portion and one to the bottom. And when you add these two, the 2 circles on the left and right side, the far left and right, are going to overlap. And that's how you make sure that it's put on properly. If they don't overlap, it's not going to match your ornament properly. And once those are put on there nice and well, all I have to do is add the little topper on the ornament, and that's the little metallic piece I cut out, and I'm going to add that with just a tiny bit of foam to give it a little bit of dimension. So now that our ornament is done, I'm going to go back to the actual framework. So you can see here that this was the embossed panel. I actually went back and I added some more of that plum ink and I just kind of scraped it across the top to add just ink to the embossed portions. And it really helped the design or the embossed image stand out a lot more. So now for all of those little panels. So the 4 panels, curved panels on the top and bottom, all I've got to do right now is fold those score lines, and you're just folding them inwards, right? There's 2 score lines on either side. Once I've got all those done, what I'm going to do is add some strong double-sided adhesive to the outer tab. So the tab that's on the far left and the far right of that piece. These tabs are what you're going to use to adhere the pieces together and to the back panel. So what I did was take off the release paper from one side and I've kind of folded it flat so that, you know, it's flat on that, the 2 scored portions, right? So I'm just getting the center panel there. And what I've done is I've lined it up so that that rectangle is seen. And then I'm going to also have the rectangle seen from the other panel. So there's 2 panels here, and you can see once you prop it up, it's going to stand nicely as a nice curved rectangle for your ornament to sit at the top. So you can see how that boxes in and works there. And I've done that for both panels, so the top and the bottom. Now I just have to attach it to the back panel. So I find the best way to do this is to release one release paper and line up the corner and the edge. So I'm lining up the corner and the edge of that tab and I'm attaching it. And then what I'm going to do is flip this over, fold it flat, release the release paper, and then stick it down. I really highly recommend doing this while it's folded flat, the way that it's going to fold when you put it in your envelope, so that you know when you do go to flatten it, it's going to flatten nicely. Now I've done this for both the top and the bottom panels. And you can see I've just got one more piece here that I will release. And again, I'm attaching it while the panel's flat, while the card is flat. This is the best way to make sure that your card's going to fold flat and fit in your envelope nicely. And then all you have to do is kind of adjust it, kind of fold it the way that you need to make it stand up nicely, and then fold flat again. So you just kind of have to play with it a little. Once that is done, then all I have to do is add these detailed portions to the side pieces. I've got one for either side, and you can see that it's got like a little slit where you can kind of stick it in behind the top and bottom panels. So you see that little slit? That's where you're going to add glue. So I'm going to add it to the back portion and then on the front on that purple arch. So all right, here you can see I'm going to add the glue at the top, and then all I have to do is kind of slip it in, having the top panel in between the two pieces of the sidebar, and then hold it flat so that the glue adheres. Now, once this is done on one side, I kind of fold it down flat to make sure that everything is adhered nicely and give it a bit of pressure. And I'll go ahead and do this on the other side and use the exact same method to make sure that everything's in place. Now, I did kind of show this earlier that you might want to make sure that your frames are like the curves are running the same way, either the curves up or the curves down, or you could use it one up and one down. It's really up to you. So you can see now that you have your side panels on, your display box kind of stands much more sturdily and nicely. Now I've taken that that attachment that will attach your ornament to the card, to the inside of the card, and I've kind of folded it and adhered it together. That gives it a bit more sturdiness as well. And then I folded a little piece at the top. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to kind of have it hanging at the top of the frame and adhere it with a bit of tape as I'm doing here. Now, to have it hanging like that really helps me use gravity to make sure that the ornament is falling in the right way and in the center of the card. So that just helped me put it together. You could adhere it, straight to the panel on the front end of the panel rather than folding it over. It's whatever works for you. There's no, steadfast way to do this. And so now that I've got my ornament attached, the last thing that I have left to do is to kind of just decorate it. So now I've got all of those other elements cut out. All I have to do is arrange them around the display card or the display box card the way that you want it. So what I'm going to do is add a couple poinsettias on either corner and then one on opposite corners just to balance it all out. I'll add the little gold branches and the hollies and then the little berries. And all this is doing is just basically jazzing up your card and giving it a bit more shine and interest and making it more Christmassy is what I like to say. Now, anytime I add decorations like this, I like to have different levels of dimension. So I'll attach the background pieces, so the branches and the stuff that's going behind the poinsettias, with liquid glue so it sits flat on the card. And then for the poinsettias, I'll prop them up with a bit of foam squares or things like that so that, you have varying levels of depth in your card. Especially with this card, it has lots of dimensions since it is a display box card. Now for the sentiment, I use the outline sentiment dies from the small die set of the month, and I've cut it out of some light pink cardstock as well as some white craft foam. Now I use the craft foam for this because to cut small foam square pieces or foam strips would be insane for this very intricate and thin sentiment. So the foam works best and the dies work perfectly for cutting out foam. So I'm just going to adhere the cardstock to the foam and then I'm going to place this sentiment on the shadow box or the display box. And I've done this for Merry and Christmas. And for the Merry portion, you have the ERRY and the M separate. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that it's not like one continuous sentiment like the Christmas is. Now I did kind of play around with the sentiment. There is the shadow die as well, and I kind of looked at it with some vellum and thought that, I don't really need the vellum. I want that plum cardstock to show through, so I just kind of adhered the actual sentiment without the shadows. And I had a bit of extra glue there in the Merry, and since I did add ink, it would kind of change the color of the ink, so I had to remove that, and I just did that with my pick. And now you can see that final card is good and ready to go. So I can stand it up nicely, I can fold it flat and fit it into an envelope, and it just looks very nice. And keep in mind, this is the large die of the month. It creates a larger card. So as I said, this is a 5 by 7 inch display box card. And then to finish this card off, I added some clear gem embellishments. So I added some to like the centers of the stitching on the ornament. I added to the center of the poinsettias. I added it to the berries. So there are little circles that you can cut out from cardstock to use on the berry portion of the berry branches, but instead I just used my gems. And there you have the final display box card. Now, for the small die of the month, I'm just going to quickly go through the card that I made. I will have a reel for this posted on Instagram and as a video short on YouTube here. You can see that I just grabbed all of the sentiments and I didn't use the shadows, just the sentiment, and I cut it out of some white cardstock. And I love making backgrounds with sentiments like this, especially with this nice scripty writing. I just basically cut it out. I used that Artist Tack dry adhesive that I used in previous videos. It's basically an adhesive that turns intricate die cuts into stickers, so you could use your Xyron machine here. And I just attached all of those sentiments in a diagonal fashion on some light pink cardstock. I then used the Spellbinders Duo Lines Glimmer Rectangles to foil a rectangle onto a white piece of cardstock. I added the Holiday Wishes sentiment using some of that brown glitter foam that was released a while ago. And then I added the poinsettia and those little sprigs that also come with the small die of the month. And those are my 2 cards for inspiration for you. In a second, I'll show you how to fold that card down. You can see you fold it down so only one rectangle is showing on the right side so that it's going to fit into a 8-inch by 5.5-inch envelope. So this is about half the size of a standard size piece of paper. So I can pretty much fit the card in here and it fits nice and flat. It's got a little bit of extra room and it works nicely for this card, especially because it's on the larger end. And you can see once you bring it out, you unfold it and it stands up nicely and sturdily, and then you can fold it back and stick it back in your envelope. So I hope that my video has been inspiring for you today. You found a bit more instruction in maybe putting the display box together and some techniques that you could use for your own cards. If you've liked my video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos because I will be sharing the rest of the club kits for October with you throughout the week. I hope you'll have a great day and I hope to see you guys again next time. Don't forget to check out the link in my description below to my blog, which has all of the products used here. Have a great day and I'll see you guys again in a couple days.